Lauren, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Lupe, for having me here. I'm thrilled to be on your podcast and truly honored. This is a first for me to even be on a podcast. So
Ah, so
it's
exciting.
wonderful to meet you, but also such a great growth opportunity for me personally and for MEL, our brand.
Yeah. Lauren and I met over Instagram. We both follow another podcast. How'd she do that? Emily Landers, who's also been on the podcast. It's so nice to meet you, even though it's not in person, but virtually. It feels very cool to get to meet an Instagram friend.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I know. And I adore Emily Landers so much. And I'm excited to dive in and to chat a bit more about Mel and where the inspiration came from. But I think one of the most wonderful things about the pandemic was just breaking down those walls and connecting with women across the country, like yourself, who put out inspiring content and really helped me to keep going during
Mm.
some really challenging days. So it's been a long time coming. I'm thrilled to meet you as well and to be here in virtual person.
So I like to start every interview by asking guests, as a
Yeah.
kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh my goodness. So I reflected on this question quite a bit. It's a challenging one for me
Mm,
in particular. When I
mm,
was a young child, my parents actually divorced when I was 6 years old. And
mm,
so it was kind of a tumultuous time in my life when I don't know that I was really doing a lot of the imaginative play and
mm,
doing sort of
mm,
the fun things that kids were doing because my life was quickly changing from a home standpoint. But I did, after giving it some thought, recall when I was living at home during the pandemic for about a year between 2020 and 2021, going through my childhood albums. And my mom did a fabulous job of keeping record of everything that we did as children
mm.
and chronologically documented all of these momentous events for us. And every birthday party was almost always a craft party, whether it was making puff paint t-shirts or making beaded bracelets or necklaces. And
Mm,
so, funnily enough, in my 20s, I remember taking a trip with my family to Lake Placid, New York, where we have a small timeshare and spend quite a bit of time in the area. It's lovely. But walking down Main Street and finding this bead store, and I was in love. It was such a bizarre experience. At 20 something, I had been living in New York for several years already.
mm,
I was working at a big investment bank in human resources to just like gravitate, to
mm,
this store. And so they had a class and I sat for one of their sessions and ended up making this very basic beaded bracelet with turquoise and wooden beads. And I think there was some white and pink in there. And, would wear it from time to time. And there was one particular occasion I remember when I was on my way home from work in New York City on the subway and had it on, and a woman approached me and just was so excited about it and wanted to know
mm.
where she could buy it and thought it was just lovely. And I recall wanted to buy it for her daughter. She was visiting the city from somewhere else. And that was just astonishing to me that
Mm,
someone recognized that I had a creative flair that
mm,
I always felt like lived inside of me, but I never really received any acknowledgement or
mm.
outside sort of validation, right, from my family members that being a creative was something that was a part of me. So I sort of dismissed it and probably returned back to thinking about, an employee matter or a meeting I needed to prepare
Mm.
for and shelved the whole idea of Lauren as a creative person for many years. So I would say though, it's just beading and being really crafty and using my
Mm.
hands was something that I always enjoyed as a child and never really considered as a profession, but it was in
Yeah,
the back of my mind.
yeah. Well, how do you think that connects to what you do today? And for listeners who don't know what you do today, do you mind
Yeah.
sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my day job is I am a legal recruiter for big law firms across the country and really focus on supporting them with their professional staff or middle office jobs, as well as attorney hiring. And I've been doing this now for the last 6 months and have gone through a real professional pivot, mainly because my partner and I relocated from New York City to Palm Beach in May of last year. And the market is just very different for HR professionals in the area. Prior to that, though, I was an HR generalist at a very big law firm and then an HR business partner at one of the big investment banks. So human resources is what I studied. I have my master's in it from Fordham University and my bachelor's degree in psychology from Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York. And in addition, though, to working in recruiting, I also started MEL Sleepwear, which was co-founded with my mother, Elaine, who just celebrated her 60-something birthday recently. My sister, Mia, who is a junior at Boston University and is now 21. And this all started during the pandemic. And I think out of a desire to really escape what we were experiencing when we were living together in our family home in upstate New York, just to escape the day-to-day monotony of being online. I was working online full time. Mia was going to school online and really wrapping up her senior year in a very unceremonious way, and then transitioning to remote learning at a very large university. And our mom, Elaine, is a nurse practitioner, and she was going into nursing homes and changing in and out of PPE all day long. And so I think at the end of the day, we were all just so exhausted by giving to others that we really needed to find a creative outlet and to do something that brought us joy. And so we individually pursued different paths, I would say, for a few months, where I was taking photography lessons online. My mother was taking painting lessons through our local museum, Munson Williams Proctor Institute in the basement. And Mia was learning to play the piano. But really what stood out to us just as time went on and as we would gather around the table on Sundays and read the Wall Street Journal was just how prominent athleisure wear and day dresses and sleepwear were becoming. And so we, on several occasions, would pull out all of our different sleep shirts and pajamas, and we're in different phases of life. Mia, as I had mentioned, is 21. I'm 38. My mother is in her 60s. And so we were all attracted to different things. But I think the one thing that we could agree upon was that we wanted something that was almost a transitional piece, because we had, during this period of time, become so accustomed to wearing PPE, or I moved from wearing suits to work to wearing sweatpants to work every day. And same with Mia. You know, Mia was a ballerina and she was used to being in school and then changing in her leotard and then going to bed. And so inevitably, we all kind of decided that we wanted something that was going to really support us in just demarcating the end of our work day or school day and beginning that ritual of getting ready for bed. And so the focus was on finding fabric that was really soft, that could keep us warm, but that would also keep us cool, and something that was easy to wear and made us feel really feminine. Because I think during the pandemic, it was just sort of, you know, ponytails all over the place. And we really just changed, I think, as many people did, the way that we care for ourselves.
Thank you for sharing. I agree. I think during the pandemic a lot, and I am sure people listening will agree, that there was this feeling almost of like grief over not being able to kind of dress up or wear something nice, or trying to find just something that didn't feel too at odds with being at home all day, right? So like wearing a suit in your house just didn't feel right, even if you were on calls. And for those who aren't familiar with Lauren's brand, it's a beautiful style. You can better describe it, but it's beautiful. Sure. It's elegant and it's feminine. There's something just really nice about it. And like this feeling of being put together. And there's something really nice too. I know I have both. I have pajamas and then I have like my loungewear that I alternate sleeping in. And there is just something nice about when I have a nice pair of pajamas on that I feel just a little nicer, a little more confident. There's something else there. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about there, that in that period, you were missing that and you were wanting to create that.
I think we really wanted to create that special experience for
Yep.
ourselves and for other women. And I think you described it beautifully. I think we all agreed that we were attracted to these menswear inspired sleep shirts that have the collar and they button all the way up, and they're generally made of cotton. And we really liked many elements like the collar and the sleeves and the length. But what was missing for us was just the feminine aspect. And so we replaced the cotton with micromodal, which is really super soft and it regulates to your body temperature. So it will keep you really cool if you run warm at night, and it will keep you warm if you're chillier in the evening. And so just that softness, right, of that type of fabric hitting your skin before going to bed and really during bed, we found to be very supportive. We also just loved the details of being able to ruche the sleeves a little bit or the shoulders just to give it a bit more style and volume rather than something hanging kind of flat. And then we cinched the waist to give it more of a, I would say, just a dressier, more elegant feel. And then my favorite part is that we eliminated 50% of the buttons. So this is a style that you can simply pop over your head and begin your evening routine. And I couldn't agree with you more. Whenever I wear MEL, I just truly feel like when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, like I am ready for bed. I have something that is designated and reserved for bed. And I am very much like you. There are evenings when I want to wear my pajamas. I want long pants, and eventually we'll go in that direction. But the sleep dress was really, I think, what we were craving and what we had focused on for our first launch. I will share, we have sort of bootstrapped this ourselves, which is why we have one style. So it's been lovely to connect with women and to hear about how they're receiving MEL and the different aspects that they're enjoying about wearing it. And we absolutely get feedback around the desire for a pajama set, whether that be long pants or a short set or sleeveless. And we love listening to our customers and jot down everyone's comments and feedback. But I think, as anyone can appreciate, there is money, right, that goes into investing in a business. And it's not just the product, it's our logo, it's the website design, it's the consultant, right, we're partnering with because we're not trained designers. So there are many different sort of factors that we had to take into consideration when deciding, well, how many styles can we actually afford to launch initially? And so I like to call us a micro brand. We're very small, in that regard right now, but I think we're really also excited about just the way that creating, and particularly creating in this way to support women in hopefully getting a better night of sleep by being intentional about routines, is lighting up our souls.
Yeah. And then part of why I was excited too having you on is that you are earlier on in your business. So when was your official launch? Was it a year ago? I can't
The official
remember.
launch was December of 2022, which was a really challenging time, I think, given the economy was starting to really suffer. And so it was a bit of a nerve-wracking time, but officially December 3rd, 2022.
Yeah. And I was excited. I bought as soon as you announced, I was like, I'm excited to purchase one. And I couldn't decide which one I wanted. There's 3 colors and they're beautiful. So a part of that was, I think sometimes when people hear on a podcast just about a successful business, you don't get to hear as much of the early elements or like in the middle of what you're doing. And I love that you shared that you still have your full-time job and that you're doing this alongside in parallel. I think sometimes the media can make it seem like a lot of people just quit their jobs, they go for their dreams. And so I love that you shared that you're doing both and that you're trying to figure it out. And then you're starting with one design because that's what makes sense right now. And you're getting feedback. Tell me about that. What have you learned about yourself, Lauren, through this process?
Oh my goodness, such a great question. I think there was a lot of self-doubt initially. So
Mm,
for anyone who is listening, there's quite a bit actually on our website about my mother's story, Mia's
mm,
story, and they can't be with us today, but they're certainly here in spirit. But I would say I am so much more capable than I have
mm,
ever given myself credit
mm,
for. And I would say I wish that I had started doing this years ago, really pursuing what was in my heart and paying attention to your earlier question,
yeah.
which is, what did you think you were going to do as a child? I've developed so much more sense of self-awareness
Mm,
and this devotion to myself in terms of committing to stepping into who I know I can be and who I
mm,
really ultimately want to be, and stepping away and moving away from whether it's the career or the people or even just the things that I surround myself that no longer serve me, so
mm,
that I can develop that self belief because it doesn't come naturally. I
mm,
would say throughout my entire professional career of working in the corporate environment, I was always very successful at what I
mm,
did and could say that in a very humble way, but received a lot of feedback from
mm,
senior people who I admired and respected. But I was really lacking when I would go home in the confidence department.
mm,
And I would absolutely run the ticker tape and rehash events that had happened throughout the day where maybe I could have done something differently or better. And I think I exhausted myself
yeah.
essentially. And so that doesn't leave a lot of room when you're spending 100% of your free time thinking about what you did wrong. It doesn't leave
Mm,
a lot of room for developing kind of that muscle of maybe this went wrong, but this went right. And let's think about maybe how you could do it differently going forward. Or are you just being self critical? And how can you develop more self belief? So I would
mm,
say my confidence has probably increased over the last year and a half. I think a lot of the skills that I learned in the corporate environment, interestingly enough, have transferred
mm,
to starting an e-commerce business. A lot of it is about being organized, it's
mm,
being humble and being willing to be a student and to reach out to people who are more knowledgeable in a space than you are, to gather the information, put it together, continue to ask the questions, and research and make decisions. So I really feel like my time in the corporate environment is serving me well. And I think my mother's skills of being a nurse practitioner,
mm,
and Mia has an incredible story of just overcoming individuals who did not believe in her ability to be a ballerina. And she went on to become an incredible ballerina. And so there are a lot of different skills that I think we each bring to the table that really contribute to MEL. And so I know they've learned things about themselves as well, but I think this idea of just believing in myself, being confident in the direction that I'm taking my professional career, given that it's now going in multi directions, which is a little scary at times, but it's exciting too. It feels much more in line with who I am. So I'm loving that alignment piece that's coming into play in my life
mm,
now.
mm. Well, Lauren, thank you for sharing that piece around the confidence when you're coming home from work from these, like, I imagine if you're working at a big investment bank, like at a big law firm, someone might look at you and see you doing a good job at work, right? You said you were getting these accolades at work, or probably people didn't realize that you were coming home and beating yourself up about something that went wrong. And so I love that you shared that because I think there's probably someone listening who's coming home from work and beating themselves
Hmm.
up. Becoming an entrepreneur, I once heard someone say that it's the biggest personal development project that you can embark on because there's so much that we learn about ourselves through launching a business. Like all the things that we need to work on will surface to the top
Yes.
when
Yeah. Oh,
building a business.
that's so true. I mean, there's so much room for growth, which is at times truthfully overwhelming. But
Yeah.
then it's also exciting
Mm,
because I really believe that I am living my fullest life when I am aware of where I can improve or what I can learn. What can I do to streamline a process, or learning about just technical terms, right? In this industry is exciting. It makes me feel alive. It's actually interesting thinking about the different generations that make up MEL, because my mother's response to your first question would have been a teacher, secretary, or a nurse, because those were the options available to her when she was growing up. And she was born in the 60s. And so the expectations, though, evolved, right, for my generation.
Yeah.
And my parents encouraged my brother and I, who are about the same age, to pick a college and then you select a career. And that's the career that you do for the rest of your life. And then my half sister, Mia, who is in her junior year right now at BU, is truly exceptional at everything. And she would tell you about 10 different careers that she would love to do, and is having a really difficult time picking a path. But I think ultimately we'll do several different things. And I think that's becoming the norm. And I actually think the pandemic really allowed a lot of us to, of course, reflect on our lives, but also reimagine our lives and redesign our lives in a way that is maybe a bit more unconventional than the way that we were brought up. You know, I will forever be grateful for that, because I do think I would have stayed on that track of living in New York City and riding the subway and doing my job and retiring, at a big firm. It would have been great, but I don't know that I would have been entirely happy, or my soul would have been entirely happy. So I once heard, I think Athena Calderon is her name, of I Swoon, the blog. It's just such a lovely person, and I really admire just everything she's done personally and professionally in her career. But I heard this term during the pandemic called a multi-hyphenate, and that's how she describes herself. It clicked for me, the idea of being a multi-hyphenate, having maybe more than one revenue stream, right, for your career, or being more than one thing and having that be accepted. It was just such a breath of fresh air coming off of 10 years or so living in New York and being on this programmatic track in human resources. Sure. So there's a lot, I think, that come out of this experience of creating a business. So many teachings, and truly look forward to all of them. And there are high moments and really low moments as well. Yeah. I mean, it can be incredibly lonely and very scary at times when you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your product out there, and people are either responding or they're not. There's a lot that goes into questioning just yourself, right? As a business owner, should I continue doing this? Should I not? Am I moving in the right direction? Am I not? And I think just that practice of self-reflection is so important, and kind of silencing that inner critic and kind of getting back into that mode of, okay, I believe in what I'm doing. This is resonating for some people. There are other people out there, and there's always room for improvement. And I am new at this, and I will get better, right? If I devote the time and the energy to what we're doing. It's a bit of a roller coaster.
Oh, I love all of that. And I want to dive into a few things you said. There's so much there. You talked about what the pandemic kind of did for you and for most of us, right? It was a gift in the way that it provided the space to really reflect and to really think about, okay, what do I really want? How do I really want to live? Or to get clear on our values. I know a lot of people had moved in with their families, and I think you mentioned that on your website. And so the importance of family, the importance of kind of leaning on each other. We had like a 3-home bubble, my in-laws, our home, and my parents. So the only places we would go were the 3 homes, right? So we were like this little bubble. And for me, I was already doing something I loved. It's transitioning in 2018 to do something and pivoting. I launched my podcast in 2020 in September because I started thinking about it. And then I agonized about the name for months, asking everybody. And I was just scared of failing. I think, what if I'm rejected of putting my voice out there and anyone can listen? And the thought of that was really scary. And The podcast has been one of the biggest opportunities for me to learn, the biggest blessings for me. I've had the opportunity to connect with so many wonderful people, wonderfully talented, brilliant, who I get to learn from every time. I don't know that I would have done it if it hadn't been for the pandemic. I think it would have been in the back of my mind, but I think I would have made kind of excuses for it. But it was just this open time to do it.
I fully agree with you. I think the world being on pause just created so much time, right, to really investigate what is it that I would be doing if I could do it, and I could do it maybe perfectly, right? But there is no such thing as beginning a podcast as an expert or beginning a sleepwear business as an expert. But there was this time to learn. And I think a lot of people gave themselves the opportunity and the space and the grace to really dive into it and throw caution to the wind. And frankly, Instagram comes to mind. There were so many people creating during that time period. And I recall looking at some feeds are really curated and some people were really talented at putting together just this beautiful world, right, in the midst of chaos. And then you could see there were some people who were really getting adjusted to it. And we still are with MEL. Our Instagram is not perfect by any means. We're managing it ourselves right now. But I think that that sort of was an invitation, right, to take a chance, at least for us, and to see that perfection is really an illusion. And so the only one people who are going to miss out or person who will miss out on the opportunity is ourselves, right? We're the ones who miss the boat if we're not willing to take that chance. And so that space was really integral for a lot of people. And I think we were all craving it.
What that makes me think of is the magic we miss out on when we're not willing to be vulnerable and put ourselves out there, right? You could have put your brand out there and had no one purchase anything. Or I put my podcast and no one says yes, or there's been people who didn't respond, and being willing to keep asking and to keep inviting people and to be willing to be bad at it.
You said just tugged at my heart, because that's probably been the biggest challenge, right? I think when we created the Beatrice, which is the first sleep shirt on our website, we thought everyone would love it, that it would sell out within a week. And we were absolutely wrong. So it was really hard to not feel like it would be something that everyone would love. And then two, we have reached out to hundreds of people. And you're right, not everyone responds. And I think we just developed over time a thick skin around it, because to your point, there are people who will respond. And I love that. But I love hearing the enthusiasm and the excitement that people share with us when they receive our email. And the women whom we've spoken with, just from even beginning this process, there's a woman by the name of Lauren who so beautifully put together our logo. And she couldn't have been more encouraging when we didn't even have a product. Lauren is really quite successful in New York City in her space. So it's women like yourself. It's women like Emily. We're partnering with several different Instagram bloggers like Blair Rogers, who so graciously is our model on the website. People who have believed in us, I think, have really sort of collectively, and we keep a folder of, you know, here are all of the yeses, right? Like, here's all kind feedback, because sometimes we need to revisit it to sort of re-engage or boost our spirits when we don't hear back from that person we really hope to partner with, or it's just crickets, right? From a hotel we'd love to partner with. So it's challenging, because it almost makes me feel, again, like a child. I always go back to the child, like, oh, I did something wrong, or this isn't right, or it's bad, or it's just not resonating. And so inner critic is always there. It certainly is scary, but I think over time you push through it, because you know that it's, again, what's in alignment for you individually, and what's right for us is not always right for everyone else. And so we're the ones who are responsible for designing and creating our lives. And I think all we can do is try. to invite people in to be a part of the experience. And they're either come or they don't, right? But there are no shortage of people and supportive women who are open, at a minimum, having a conversation or trying to be helpful in whatever ways they can. But I relate to that very deeply.
One of the things that also standing out for me right now is how willing to be vulnerable, transparent, and authentic you're being, just even in this conversation. You're being honest and vulnerable. And I think people are going to resonate with that because we all have that inner critic.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's scary to be vulnerable. So it's interesting. I feel much more comfortable being vulnerable out loud than, let's say, like being vulnerable in front of the camera and being on Instagram to promote our brand.
Right.
There is room again, as we've been talking about, to really grow. And I know that that's an area that I need to step into, that Mia and Elaine, our mother, need to step into as well. But there is this fear, right, of being vulnerable and exposing yourself as, I think for me, I'm speaking individually, as a creator, when I don't have the formal training, call it from Parsons or FIT. I went to Fordham and I have a degree in HR. So there is a little bit of trepidation around people are going to think that I'm just not qualified. And I've worked so hard to be qualified in these other areas of my life. So vulnerability is something that I think I hope to deepen over time. And I'm glad that MEL is really the catalyst for pushing me into that realm.
Yeah. And I think it happens in steps. You being on this podcast, being willing to be vulnerable and share your story is a step. I'm still not comfortable getting on an Instagram live.
Oh gosh. I think a big part of it too, though, is it's challenging to juggle just life right now. So I don't know how you feel about this, but pandemic seemed to just end and then life began again. And so getting back into the routine of going back to work, making dinners, making time for my partner. We don't have children, but making time for his father. We actually just recently moved in with him because that was right for our family to do that at this stage in our lives. It's incredibly challenging, I think, sometimes to carve out the space to really put together content that is going to be meaningful. And I think where we hope to go with MEL is we don't want to just be a sleepwear brand. We really want to educate women on how they can create the space to find a way to have a better night of rest. I know that most of us are probably going to bed with a to-do list that's 100 bullet points long. And so that affects sleep. Hormones affect sleep. And so we're really, I think, excited about the idea of bringing subject matter experts on who can talk about how you can support your body from the moment you wake up to the time you go to bed to really support just getting sleep. And so I think that the challenge around being vulnerable on Instagram a little bit is we want it to be deeper than just selling a sleep shirt. And so we are in this period of time where we're all trying to find the time to put together the content. And so it is a big eye opener, or it has been for us at least since launching, that it is a necessity, right, to be out there on social media and talking about your brand. But I think we're also trying to figure out that balance of how do we do that in a way where we're conveying our mission in addition to, selling something beautiful to really support that sleep.
Yeah. I hear in your voice and as you're talking, all these ideas brewing of what you could do with it, of how you could do some good in the world. There's like purpose there. And you tell me if this resonates with you, like you might beat yourself up if you don't have the time to carve out the time in your week when you have a full-time job and a partner, all these other things in life. I interviewed someone last week and I told her I'm really excited about sharing her episode. And I told her, oh, it'll be out this week. She said, that's impressive. That's great. And then I got so busy. We're hosting a birthday party and Easter this weekend. My team had it ready. They're an amazing team. And I just didn't have a chance to go through and share my edit notes and record the intro. And this morning before I came on this interview, I was beating myself up. I was like, I told Charlotte I was going to have this episode out this week. And now I need to email her and tell her I didn't have time. And then it's connected also to my purpose of just sharing these inspirational conversations. And so not allowing myself to beat myself up too hard about it.
I think that resonates with me so deeply because there needs to be some flexibility. We're so deadline driven, I think, as a culture. I think that was something that I really was struggling with towards the end of my time working at the investment bank. There was too much to do, and I was only one person. And I had all these different clients with commitments to all of them. And it was just an impossible task, right? To get it all done by the time I said I would get it done by. Half the time, the clients didn't even need what they had requested by the time they had requested it by. So, so it was just, I was always spinning my wheels, but I truly hope that we're moving into this period again where we can give ourselves and we can give other people a bit more grace, because your podcast episode is going to get out and it is going to inspire people, whether it goes out at 12:05 today or 12:05 Tuesday, right? But these things really stick with us if we're not able to meet them. And then again, that inner critic comes in and then you go down the rabbit hole, right? It's like, oh, I said I was going to do this and I didn't. And, you know, now I need to do this and, oh, I still have that to do. And it can be exhausting. And that's not where I personally want to spend my mental resources, right? I don't think it's good for my energy. It's not good for other people's energy to beat myself up. And so I'm trying to be more forgiving when I don't meet those deadlines as well, because it often just doesn't happen because life is unpredictable. There are so many uncontrollable factors.
Yes. And my listeners are still listening, and I'm so grateful for them to come back, even if I miss a week. You know, I do my best to publish an episode every week because I love it. And then there's some weeks that I have to skip. So I'm so grateful to people who come back and listen.
I think people are so focused too on what they have going on that they're probably not thinking about like specifically when an episode is coming out. Or we do this with Mel, like we're trying to post. We have there's this wonderful woman here in Palm Beach. Her name is Junior Sandler. She's a phenomenal artist. She has been a tremendous source of support and encouragement for us. So I just have to give her a shout out because her work is popping up all over the place now. And I think the consistency aspect is something that I've been learning from her, and I've been trying to follow and subscribe to on Instagram. But there are days when my day takes me in a different direction and I'm not able to put content out. And we're all learning how to put content out. It's not just me, it's my mother and my sister. And so I don't think anyone is missing Mel not posting every day. So, we will do our best and find our rhythm and cadence as we go on. But what I really try to focus on are the connections, right? So if I can connect with someone and support them on Instagram, then I will, whether that's a like, a comment, or sending a direct DM. And then anything that we get into our inbox, we try to prioritize because it's a connection. And so I think that that's more than the posting. It's about the connecting and being responsive to people who are showing their support.
Well, so just to close out our conversation today, Lauren, if there's someone who's wanting to redesign their own life, maybe add a creative outlet, maybe start a business, what would you say to that person listening?
Oh gosh, I would say just go for it. And I think the three things I would mention are: one, spend some time self-reflecting. And that can be really hard to do. It drums up a lot of different emotions. But I know a book that we mutually love is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And if you're not sure where to start, I would pick that book up. Even if you don't complete the program, there are so many valuable exercises to digging into who you are and what really excites you just as a human being. And then I think continuing to get curious about those things that end up on your short list that get you excited about life are the areas that you seek support or help or training to really kind of build your knowledge base. And again, it's a very exciting time to be living in right now, because there is a Zoom or masterclass or a session online for just about any topic. So seeking out even free courses. I know the Tory Burch Foundation is one that we are a huge fan of, and try to attend those free sessions whenever they're offered, just because it's knowledge and we're looking to build our knowledge base. So I would say dabble in some of those online classes. I also think making a short list of women or men or people you just really admire and what it is that you admire about them. What are the qualities about their career that really stand out to you? And a few that come to mind for me are Lydia Fenet, the author of The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that book. I'm going to check it out.
Phenomenal book. I kept it on my book side, and she just recently came out with a new book called Claim Your Confidence. And Lydia is a phenomenal public speaker. So I am not a phenomenal public speaker, and this podcast could probably be edited in so many ways. But
you did amazing.
I love just looking to Lydia when I need bursts of inspiration or some confidence. But there are so many life lessons to be learned, I think, from other people's stories. So find 2 or 3 people who you really admire, figure out why, and then Google them and see what you can learn about their story. And in my case of Lydia, I met her back in 2019, I think it was, at Rochelle Huresca's store Lingua Franca in the West Village, where she was talking about her book. And both women I very much admire. But it was a real key moment for me because I was able to connect with her in person. And Lydia is lovely and has chatted on DM with me back and forth, and is one of the people who debuted the Beatrice when we first launched.
Oh, wow.
So it's really exciting to see some of those moments come full circle, and just figuring out, like, who do I admire and what qualities do they have that I want to bring into my life is a great question to ask, and then figuring out how they did it.
I love those. I love those, Lauren. And something I tell clients when thinking about people that we admire is that, and tell me if this resonates with you, that we admire them because we see something in them that's within us too. Maybe it's not as developed, maybe it's just a seed, but they're kind of serving as a mirror for us of what's possible. So there's a reason that you admire those 2 women specifically. There's something within you that's a reflection.
That absolutely resonates with me. I think the point that you just made about it being underdeveloped is really critical. And the reason I say that is because our formative years are from when we're born to 13, and we're reared, and so much of our worldview and our sense of self is shaped by other people. And I think paying attention to these hints or clues about what really excites me and lights me up is important to invest in, because those are the pieces of us that I think probably need more nurturing and more time and space to really grow and develop. And I think sometimes people, just because they feel like maybe they've hit a certain age, they don't know how to reinvent themselves, or there's this idea right around reinventing oneself at a certain age, shy away from it. But I think we're doing ourselves a big disservice and losing out on core pieces of who we are by not paying attention to those clues. So I agree with that wholeheartedly, and truly hope that people feel inspired after today to just take some time to reflect on what parts of themselves they really want to hone in on and pay a bit more attention to. And I actually think that will help with getting a better night of sleep. When you're more connected with yourself and you're more in tune with who you are, it's easier to go to bed at night feeling really good about just I am my authentic self.
Thank you so much for being here today. I know this message is going to resonate with people.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was lovely. I feel like we could talk all day long. And
Same.
I'm so excited for this to come out and look forward to connecting with your listeners. If I can be of support or help to anyone who is listening, please feel free to reach out to us on our Instagram at MEL_Sleepwear. or my personal Instagram, lauren.n.palmieri. Maybe that can be popped in the show notes, but
Yes.
always happy to
Yes.
be a
And-
resource.
And where can people find the Beatrice? Where can people
Yes,
purchase?
so the Beatrice sleep dress can be found on melsleepwear.com. We are just about sold out of our navy colorways, which is really exciting, and 50% of the way there with our sage and our ivory color. But stay tuned, we will be debuting a new style and potentially two this summer around the June timeframe. So we look
so
forward
exciting.
yeah, we're thrilled about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.